You ever been in an argument that just completely spirals and you're left thinking, how on earth did we get here? Or maybe you've seen one of those viral videos where someone just has a total public meltdown. Well, today we're diving into what's basically a cheat code for human conflict, a really powerful psychological model that's going to help you instantly diagnose and diffuse just about any tense situation. Let's get right into it. Just think about the last time you saw a really pointless argument blow up. You know, that fight over who was supposed to take out the trash, or a customer screaming because their pizza was like 2 minutes late. It was never really about the trash or the pizza, was it? This one idea, this is the key to unlocking everything else. So if it's not about the facts, if it's not about what actually happened, then what in the world is driving all that emotion and manipulation and just chaos? That is the exact question we are going to answer right now. To get to that answer, we've got to decode what's really happening inside the human brain during one of these meltdowns. We need to look past all the shouting and the finger pointing to see the hidden triggers that are actually running the show. Okay, this right here, this is the game changer. Every single time you see someone just lose their composure, their brain is reacting to a perceived danger. It's not a physical one, but an ego danger. Their fundamental sense of self feels like it's under attack, and their brain just flips into survival mode, totally bypassing any kind of logic. So how do we spot this ego danger in real time? Well, we use a diagnostic tool. This is the ego threat triangle. And it's the framework that's going to help us see the predictable patterns hiding behind all that seemingly random, chaotic behavior. You know, the power of this model is really in its simplicity. It shows us that all those crazy reactions, they're all driven by a threat to one of just three core human needs. And once you can figure out which need is being threatened, you'll know exactly how to respond.
So let's start with the first corner of the triangle, identity. This is our internal story, right? Our self-concept. It's who we believe we are, what we think we deserve, and how we think other people should treat us. When that story is threatened, people will do almost anything to protect it.
And here's how this actually plays out. Someone gets super defensive because their behavior doesn't line up with their shiny self-image. Or they might start playing the victim because in their internal story, they're always the one who's been wronged. It's not about them consciously trying to lie to you. For their ego, rewriting the story feels like a matter of life and death. You've heard this before, right? This is the battle cry of an identity that's under attack. The argument is no longer about the actual issue. It's about defending their character. They are literally fighting to prove they're not the bad guy in the story, because to their ego, that feels like a mortal wound. All right, let's move to the second corner of the triangle, control. This is our deep, kind of primal need to have a say in what happens, to feel like we have some agency. When we feel that control slipping away, our brain freaks out, and this primal need to just grab the steering wheel takes over. You know, that last one, control deficit carryover, that is a huge insight. It explains so many of those public meltdowns we see. People who feel totally powerless in their job or in their relationships are walking around with this deficit of control, and they try to balance the scales in the one place they feel they can, like with a barista or a retail worker. They're just desperately trying to get back a sense of power they feel they're lacking everywhere else. This is such a classic attempt to get control of the narrative back. When someone says this, they feel their ability to direct the conversation is just evaporating, and their brain is sending out a panic signal that says, "Warning, warning, I am no longer in charge here." And this brings us to the final corner of our triangle, safety. Now, this is absolutely crucial. We're not talking about physical danger here. This is all about social safety. It's about our status, our sense of belonging, our place in the tribe. It's constantly asking the question, am I still okay here? Am I accepted? This one might be the most subtle and important threat to really get. Your success can accidentally trigger someone else's insecurity. Your confidence can make them feel socially unsafe. They perceive this sudden power imbalance, and their brain interprets it as a massive threat to their place in the social pecking order. So the key takeaway here is that safety threats are tricky. They rarely look like a direct attack. Instead, the person might get sarcastic or drop a passive-aggressive comment. What they're trying to do is just destabilize you a little bit, just enough to get their own sense of social footing back and feel secure again. Okay, so we've got the theory, we understand the three core threats. Now for the good part, how do we actually use this in the real world? How do we go from just diagnosing the problem to actually diffusing it? This right here, this is the cheat sheet. It's the practical rubber meets the road application of the whole model. And it's so important to get why these phrases work. So if you see defensiveness, that's an identity threat. You don't argue with them about the facts. You remove the threat by reinforcing their good self-image, saying something like, I know you're not the kind of person who would do that on purpose. If they're talking over you, that's a control threat. You don't fight them for the mic, you just hand them control by asking, what do you need from me right now? And if you get hit with sarcasm, that's a safety threat. You don't get defensive, you just align with them. You say, you know what, we're on the same side here, which instantly rebuilds that feeling of social safety. All right, now we're going to level up. It's not just about diffusing their reaction, it's about making sure you don't get sucked into their emotional reality, what's called their frame. A frame is like the unspoken context and power dynamic of a conversation. And to keep control of your own frame, there are some really critical mistakes you have to avoid.
Every single one of these is a trap. It's designed to pull you into their world. See, when you explain yourself under pressure, you're accepting their frame that you did something wrong, and you're now on trial. When you apologize just to make it stop, you're basically validating their attack and teaching them that being aggressive works. And trying to win with logic? That's like trying to put out an emotional forest fire with a spreadsheet. You're just using the wrong tool. Because you're not dealing with a logical problem, you're dealing with an emotional threat.
So the ultimate pro move, it isn't about being good at fighting. It's about preventing the fight from ever even starting. And you do that by setting the stage correctly from the very first second. This is called tactical pre-framing. Think of it like setting the rules of a game before you start playing. Instead of just reacting to a hostile conversation that's already off the rails, you proactively create the conditions for a productive one. You get to define what the conversation is really about, what your roles are, and what the rules of engagement are going to be. And here's the playbook in action. Notice the sequence here. First, you hack their identity by giving them a positive role to live up to. Then you define the frame by saying the goal here is problem solving, not blaming. You align the sides, which puts you both on the same team against the problem, and then finally, you set clear boundaries for behavior. By the time you even get to the real issue, you've already diffused 90% of the potential conflict before it even had a chance to get started. So, I'll leave you with this question to think about. In your life, have you won more arguments than you've solved problems? Because if the answer is yes, then maybe the goal shouldn't be to win the fight, but to reframe the conversation so there's no fight to be won in the first place.